be here. Thank you for joining. This event is an amazing opportunity to share with you about the amazing world of the gut microbiome. So this awesome community that lives in our bodies, and they live in a relationship where they benefit from us, but we also benefit from them. So they can help us digest food and produce some nutrients for us, but they are also involved in a lot of other functions in our body. And that means that they can have a huge impact in our overall health. So I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Toronto, and I study the gut microbiome of adolescents. So I'm originally from the north of Mexico, and there I became a dietitian and did my master's in nutrition and the microbiome. So I have always loved puzzles, and very quickly learned that research is like solving a very exciting puzzle that can have implications in understanding how our body works and how it functions. So I'm always excited to share with what I learned, and reviving in others this amazing feeling that I get when I learn something. So that's why I'm so happy to be here and share what I do with you. So let's get started. So as a dietitian myself, I was very excited to learn that the environment that lives in our gut, it's very connected to our overall health, right? Because we, as a dietitian, we focus on the diet that we eat, so that impacts our health. But then knowing that there's an intermediate there was very excited to learn. And it's not, it allowed me to see like the microorganisms as a whole new lens, not only as something that we want to avoid, right? That because they cause disease, but also something that we should care for and work together with. So in a sense, I learned that we are never really alone, and because close to half of our cells are microbial cells. So they include viruses, fungi, archaea, and bacteria. And the bacteria ones are the ones that are more, the ones most well studied, and that's because they are more abundant in our body. So wait a minute, aren't microbes bad for us? I mean, aren't we in this pandemic caused by this respiratory virus? And in a sense, yes, microbes can cause a lot of diseases. And as Anindita said, they can be two-faced coins. So, but not all of them. And that's what is really interesting. The ones that live in our bodies every day can actually help us fight the bad ones. So it's a very, very complex community. And just like in a forest where you have some animals that are predators and some that are prey, they all live together there. So some species can help others stay in balance. So how this balance works in our microbiome. So I'm gonna show you an example. So I have this jar of tags, and let's say that the jar represents our intestines or our gut, and the different tags represent different microbes. So you can see them here. So let's say they are all bacteria. So let's say they represent a different type of bacteria, different species of bacteria. So as you can see, we have many different types. So each of them have very, very different functions, but they, as I said, they help each other stay in balance. So let's say that a red tag will feed from the fiber from an apple, and then that's what they need to survive. So after like eating the fiber from the apple, they will actually produce some compounds. And then those compounds will actually be helpful for another type of bacteria. And then these bacteria can only eat those compounds. And then by digesting those compounds, they will produce a vitamin that is essential for us. So you can see how they actually interact a lot, and it's not that we want one specific bacteria in our bodies. We want a lot of variety of bacteria. So they all work together, and there is not one bacteria that is better for everyone. So they all live in balance. And what research has found is that in some diseases, this balance is disturbed. And however, just like diet and everything in our lives, there is not one ideal microbiome or one solution for everyone. So we are all very unique, and in the same way that our microbiome is like our fingerprint. So we all have a unique fingerprint, and we can maybe, if we have a cut, change it, but it will stay the same overall. So be very wary if you find anyone selling you anything that claims to fix your microbiome, because we don't even know what a healthy microbiome looks like, and it might look very different for you than it looks for me. So another question that I always had is like, where do these microbes come from? Like, we know they're everywhere, but how do they get in our body? So recent studies are still debating the origin of this question. So some have found that some bacteria are present in the placenta, so even before we're born. But some studies have found that the bacteria that they identify in the placenta might come from actual contamination. So what we do know for sure is that birth might be one of the most important events for the microbes to get into our body. So different types of birth, different feeding practices, and different environments can shape our microbiome in different ways. So then after birth, our microbiome is still very susceptible to change. And it is believed that around age 2 of human life, our microbiome gets established. So it will remain, after that, it will remain the same throughout our lives in general. And some, as I said, some changes can still happen when we're adults, but the overall environment is already established by age 2. So there's this specific period of time in our lives before we become adults when a bunch of changes can happen in our bodies, and these can even make us think that no one can ever understand us. So this period is called puberty, and it happens in adolescence. So actually, some recent studies have shown that there's some difference in the microbiome of adolescents compared to adults, and this is the period of time that I study in my research. So I study how the microbiome in adolescence is influenced by different environmental factors or different variables in a group of adolescents. So my research is based in adolescents from Brazil. So looking at poop. So as you can imagine, it might not be easy to open someone's belly and then just take a sample from their intestines and study the microbiome, right? That might be quite invasive. And also, we cannot just stick, like as an endoscopy, we cannot just stick something inside people's body just to see their bacteria and viruses. One, because they're very small, they're very, very tiny. And two, because that will be extremely uncomfortable and will make actual research very hard to do. So it will be very hard to know, to collect, like invite participants to actually want to do an endoscopy to study their microbiome, right? So the easiest way of doing it is, as Emily said, looking at our poop. So we take a sample of your poop and then we analyze it. So how do we do it? Like I did it in my research is, so we collect a bunch of stool samples from the adolescents in Brazil, and then we ship them all to Canada here in Toronto. So after we have the poop, what happens is that we put a bunch of chemicals into a tiny amount of poop, like very, very little. And we add all these chemicals, and then that way we can extract the DNA that is contained in that poop. And why do we need the DNA? So the DNA is the way that we can actually know which bacteria or fungus or viruses or fungi are in our intestines. So we have this DNA that we extracted from the poop, and then we put it into this machine. And this machine will actually read these DNA sequences. And then after that comes a bunch of computational things that we, once we have this information, like all the sequences of DNA that we extracted from the poop, we actually compare that to a dictionary. So in this dictionary, we have a bunch of sequences from bacteria that we know where they belong to. So let's say one bacteria will have a specific sequence, and then we compare that to the one that we got in our sequencing run, right, in our poop. And then we can say, okay, these bacteria, this means that this sequence means that is this specific bacteria based on our dictionary that we have. So that's the way that we can know which bacteria live in our gut. And after that, then we can do a bunch of mathematical models and statistical analysis to see and compare different groups or different environments. So for example, children who have pets in their home, children who use antibiotics, children with different BMI categories. So this is the way that we can study the microbiome. And this is what I do every day. So I do a bunch of models and evaluate a bunch of statistics. So by knowing who lives there, by knowing who lives in our intestines, in our gut, first of all, will help us understand if there are certain specific bacteria species that can that are only specific for adolescents. And that way, then we can focus into those specific bacteria and see what are their functions, what are they doing in our body, are they producing specific vitamins, are they producing specific hormones, are they producing specific things, right? And then after that, this can be very helpful to identify different therapies or different interventions for these children in case there's a problem. So overall, my research looks into the microbiome of adolescents, and with the hopes that in the future we can help develop therapies for disease.
Science.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question, and that's always something that we want to control for before we start the study. So we want to know how are you going to make the poop stable, because if we don't do any, like if you just leave like a piece of poop like in the environment, it will actually start growing, like it will actually start changing its composition, and we don't want that, right? Because we want to compare what's actually as close as what it's inside of someone to be able to draw these conclusions with other all these other factors that you were mentioning. So what we the gold standard, like the best practices, the best way to do it is to actually, can you think about it? You just put it in the freezer. Like if you put it in the freezer, it doesn't change. Like it gets stable. But sometimes that's very difficult, and especially in like some communities where not everyone has access to a freezer, or in this case where you want to ship something across the world, that becomes very expensive. So one thing that we did, that we use, and that we found that has been developed like recently, I think in the last 10 years or so. So it's this tube that I was talking about. So it's a tube that contains a liquid that stabilizes the poop there. So it doesn't change, it keeps its composition, it doesn't multiply, it doesn't go bad, it just stays there. So this liquid is what helps, and we ask like a very small amount of poop, like it's not like a huge bucket of poop that we get, it's just like this small tube. And then this small tube comes inside a bag, and then this is like a closed bag, and then this bag, it's put inside a little box with a bunch of other poops, and then this box comes inside another box, and that's how we ship poop. Yeah, that's a very good question. And like as I said, the fun fact is that we come from bacteria. Like those were the first things that lived in the planet, and they like then de-evolve and we became us, right? So in a sense, they have always helped us. We didn't know they were like their function before. So I think in the last maybe 15 years or 20 years is where when we started developing all these technologies, it became cheaper to actually study the gut microbiome. So that's why it has been like increasingly like a boom that everyone is talking about it. But it has always been there. We just didn't know that they had a function, like a specific function directly in our health. So, and also it was very expensive to look at it. So most people were not like able to do research as we do now. A really good question, and unfortunately we still don't know. We do know, like we do know there are some difference in their timing of maturation, let's say, but we still don't know like how hormones regulate that, because as we like as I said, the microbiome interacts with everything in our body. So if you think of something, you will find a paper like saying that the microbiome is influenced by that, and that's probably also because, as Simon said, we have like a trillion bacteria. So if you look into it, you will find something that changes. But the actual implication of if it's differently stable, we still don't know. And this is like, unfortunately, because puberty is such a difficult time to research, not everyone looks at it. So that's why I look at it. we like we know it keeps evolving, like, but as I said, it's as we know, like what we're for sure know right now is that by age 2 or 3, when, if you think about it, children is already eating most of adult food, it's already exposed to a lot, like most of the things that he will be exposed, or she will be exposed in adult life. It believed that it's kind of established by then, but it might not change like drastically from that age to adolescence, but what we're interested in is to actually say, okay, it keeps the same, or if there's like specific bacteria species that can like are involved in this whole process of hormonal changes that happen in puberty. So, and continue to adulthood, like when once you're not an adult, like yes, your microbiome will be changing, but these changes are very, very small compared to what happens in early life. So that's why we say it's a fingerprint, because it's kind of, it's like if you think about it and you go to, let's say, a forest, and then you want to plant this flower there, but that flower is not picking up, like it's not taking over the entire forest, and it's because the environment is very different from what this flower is used to, or so the soil, the environment, the climate, and the access that it has to water and all these things. So it's the same with the microbiome. So there's this thing that I don't know if people have heard about, that it's called the fecal transplant, that you can actually put someone else's poop into other people, and this is used mainly as a therapy for people with very bad digestive problems, so Crohn's disease, as caused by Clostridium difficile. So this is kind of like, so these people, the normal therapies that they get, like they use antibiotics, like they try to kill these specific bacteria with antibiotics, but it doesn't work. It grows again, it takes over. So what they found is that when they do actually do a transplant from someone that is considered to be healthy, these microbes take over and kind of adapt to that environment. So you can just put one bacteria, but if you actually bring the whole environment that all these microbiome is into this other environment, it might take over. So you cannot do that with like a forest, but that's kind of like the idea of you're actually transferring all the things together, and not just one species or one flower, like I said. Yeah, that's a really good question, and unfortunately, I don't have my results yet. But and also the thing that I'm just investigating one time point. I'm just investigating one. I'm just getting one sample from children once they're adolescents. So I'm not doing like a follow up to be able to see like what changes. But I was thinking like one interesting fact about poop, one like when we were asking Simon, and one thing that I really like got very interested in is that most of our poop is water. Did you know that?
Most of our poop needs water or eats water?
Like it's water. Like it gets bigger as if you put more water in it.
Ah.
So, yeah. So water is very important. Like it gets smoother, it changes. Like maybe it's
your
TMI,
body
but
needs water.
Yeah, your poop needs water.
Hear it. Your poop needs water.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for your interesting questions and for giving me this opportunity to talk about poop once again. So if you have any other questions or just want to connect, I have a Twitter account that it's called Lorena in Science. We can chat there. I also have an Instagram account that I usually just post in Spanish because that's my native language, and I learned that I don't know. I just wanted to share everything that I knew in every language. So I do that at Ciencia con Lore. So you can follow me too there. And we can also talk in English there. Just, yeah.